Hey friends, and thank you for tuning in. I hope you all are doing well. I'm super excited to make this video today. I have my Coven folk, Sydney and Ren here, and we are going to answer some of your questions on Ask a Witch Coven questions.
There's something about being an old coot in the Coven, you know. It just works out to your benefit.
Interesting question.
My name is Sydney. I'm the Coven folk, or part of the Coven. Eclectic witch following multiple paths. And I'm just here to help Jazz and talk about how our Coven is and some of the questions you guys had for her.
Ren, I am also part of this Coven. We like to focus more on the gods and goddesses and connecting to them, leaving offerings, stuff like that.
Thank you guys again for tuning in. I'm excited to answer some of your questions. I posted on Facebook about what questions do you have to ask a witch's coven. And in this video, the three of us will be responding from our tradition and from our practices and from our specific coven. So our coven is the Solar Court Coven, which is a local witches Indianapolis-based coven. So we will be answering from our perspectives from our coven. We do not necessarily represent all covens. We will be speaking from our tradition, which is the Solar Court Coven, and from our perspectives as individual witches as well as a collective. And I just want to make that disclaimer clear. And let's get right into the content. So what is the first question?
Okay, so the first question is, how does being in a coven affect your craft and individual work?
So we're all going to take a turn here, like addressing this conversation and having this dialogue. What would you say, Sid? How does being in a coven affect your craft as an individual, and how does your craft affect with the group?
I think it strengthens it in the sense that if there's ever something I'm not completely sure how to go about, maybe connecting with a deity, maybe what kind of offerings to leave out, maybe the best ritual, the best candle. I know I can, count on my coven folk to be like, hey, was thinking about doing this work. What are you guys thinking about this? Like getting ideas and helping with the planning. I think that's really fun. And then two, working as a coven is very collaborative in our coven, I'll say. I'm not sure from other covens, but at least for us, we work together to kind of like problem solve through what needs to be done. Like, okay, well, is it this moon phase you need to do this in? Have you pulled cards on it? Is this the best time of year to even do this work? Okay, your card said no. Okay, let's do this backup plan. Oh, maybe it's just a sigil thing. Maybe it's just a novena thing.
Question to me, like, I kind of see this, and I agree with everything that Sid said. Our coven is very collaborative, and also in our coven, doing group magic as well as working as solitaries is encouraged. So in our coven, we do magic together. That is a big part of a witch's coven, is collaborating magically and holding space for each other and helping each other manifest whatever it is our own individual wills are. But also, we do all have our own solitary practice as well, and not to tie into other questions, but I feel like being a part of our coven also kind of requires you to also step into your own witchery and have your own solitary practice. You are fully entitled to practice within the coven as well as outside the coven, as long as you uphold the oaths and the rules of the coven. So how does our individual work affect coven work? Well, it does, I would say, because everything that any of us do in the coven, or any of the other coven mates who aren't in this video do in this coven, you are kind of etherically linked together. So karmanically and dharmanically, the things that you do in the physical and the astral and the digital are going to affect your other coven folks. But having your own individual practice is definitely, I would say, a requirement to being in a coven. You need to have your own foundation. You need to have your own stability before you enter into a coven. You need to have your own practice. And then that just kind of adds to the work as a collective and working as a hive mind to manifest things as a group.
From my experience, I really enjoy it because I feel like, not that I expect my coven members to necessarily allow me to rely on them, but they are very, very helpful in directing me to where I need to go as far as like my work goes, any sigil work that I'm doing. Sydney helps a lot with the rooms. Jazz is really good with directing me, just in general, like, yeah, no, that's not a good idea. That's some Queen of Swords reversed energy bad. You don't
Want to mess with that? Go a different route. It's no good.
So our next question.
We were asked, the main question is, how experienced of a practitioner should I be before considering joining a coven? So basically, you don't have to have a lot of experience in witchcraft or any kind of craft work that you're doing. Basically, just know yourself, know what you're working towards, and make sure that the coven that you're interested in is working towards a similar goal, or if they're able to support and help you achieve those goals. Just to make sure that you know the goals of a witch, the general goals, and just basically be able to have a set, I guess, plan in mind, really.
So talking about these general goals for witches would be the 13 goals of a witch. So the 13 goals of a witch. So like Ren said, number 1, know yourself. And what does that mean? Know yourself. In my opinion, know yourself, that first goal is know that you are magical and know that you are a witch, and know that you can claim that word unapologetically and use that as a label to identify yourself with. And at least in terms of our coven, for me to be in ritual space with you, I need to know that you know that you're a witch. If we're going to be doing spell work and practice magic. Number 2, know your craft. This means, in my opinion, confidence and having some sort of foundation in your own practice. Know your craft. Know what gods you do or don't work with. Know what spells you are or are not comfortable doing. Know what kind of your occult and esoteric direction is in the craft. Number 3 would be learn and grow. This means that, and I've said this multiple times, but regardless of where you are at, witchcraft, the path of witchcraft is often called a spiral. And it's a spiral path, meaning that we continuously cycle around the path and we revisit things and relearn things that we thought maybe we already had a solid foundation and understanding of. So to me, the third goal of learn and grow means be open to accepting constructive criticism from your coven and be open to grow in your path and maybe explore other divinities or metaphysical philosophies that you maybe haven't really contemplated on, and be willing to learn and be willing to grow. For number 4 means apply knowledge and wisdom. So wisdom comes from experience. So none of us have inherent occult wisdom innately, because that comes from experience, and knowledge comes from the number 1 of 4 powers of the Magi, which is to know. You need to know the vocabulary and know what you're talking about, and that's where the knowledge comes in. It's great to read books and listen to vlogs like this and talk to other people and get other perspectives, and that's where you get the knowledge, but wisdom comes from experience. So within a coven, one of the great things about that is you can get extra resources on getting more knowledge, and you can also be mentored in a way on witches who have been practicing longer than you on their perspective of their wisdom. 5 being achieve balance. This is a big one, and I think this is one that different witches would have different takes and different opinions on, because it is kind of open-ended. To me, achieving balance means that you are mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually balanced, that you are keeping your lives in those different realms in good order, and that you are taking care of yourself, Thus, for you can take care of yourself and others magically. 6 would be keep your words in good order. You know, when you are part of a coven, like our coven, for instance, you need to be mindful about the words that you use with other people and publicly, because every single person in the coven, whether you're a high priestess or whether you're a queen in a coven or whether you're a general member in a coven, regardless of your rank, everywhere you go, in the physical, the digital, and the astral, you are representing the coven that you belong to. So keeping your words in good order is like a
serious order of business.
To make sure that you are representing yourself and your entire coven with honor and glory. Okay? Honor and glory. Keep your thoughts in good order. This one is tricky, and I'm not saying that I adhere to keep your thoughts in good order in the sense that there are things sometimes that make us have negative thought. Negative thought in the occult should not necessarily be shunned, but you need to make sure that you have a balanced mind. And this goes for any social group, in my opinion. If you are unbalanced mentally, that needs to be taken care of before you enter a ritualistic space with others. Celebrate life. This might represent different things for different witches. For me personally, and I think for our coven, celebrate life represents connecting to the natural cycles of the moon and connecting to the natural cycles of the sun and plugging ourselves in with the equinoxes, the solstices, the waxing full and waning moons, and celebrating how life and the wheel of the year turns. Connecting yourself with the cycles of the earth, I think this is similar to celebrating life. You know, you're attuning your spirit to the spirit of our planet and to the natural cycles of the world around us.
And the Sabbats too.
And the Sabbats, the solar holidays, and the Esbats, the lunar holidays. 10, breathe and eat correctly. You know, be mindful. Just be mindful. That's all that basically means. Exercise the body. Now for me, 11, this can be literal exercise. This can also be mental exercise. You know, keeping yourself magically and spiritually strong. You know, work yourself out. Work that pineal gland. Work that magic. Have your own individual practice. Meditate. We honor the god and goddess. This can represent itself by honoring divinity. That's a big thing within our coven, is the concept of divinity, and whether you view that as literal or as archetypal, that's kind of neither here nor there. But the concept and the archetypes and the being of the gods is a part of our coven, and it is a part of a lot of witches' covens.
That's 100% true. Just when it comes to the 13 goals of a witch, that is a way that you can understand where you are for yourself, even before entering a coven or petitioning a coven, or meeting people that are their own coven and you're a solitaire. I feel like that gives you an idea of where you are magically, where you are spiritually. How do I get to this place where I'm ready for a coven? How do I get to this place where I think I'm meant to be with these people and practice with these people? This might help my journey and help my practice grow.
The next question, how do you safely find a coven, stranger danger, and what are some red flags to look out for when deciding to join? And who can join a coven? Do I have to have a family line of witches to join a coven? And what is expected of me when I am part of a coven? So this is a big one. There's a lot here.
Oh, baby, let's break it down one by one.
All right, let's first start with how do you safely find a coven? And what would be some red flags to look for when deciding to join? How do you know a coven is the right fit for you?
I feel like, for one, definitely connecting with community. You know, now we live in the world of the digital, so we do have like the Facebook groups. You know, we do find more people of like, oh, let me post in here and let me kind of ask people like what they're into. You have to be very inquisitive. You have to be like really seeking in the physical and saying like, hey, I'm this kind of witch. Any of y'all want to have a kiki, maybe on Zoom, you know, if you're still in quarantine, or if you want to meet people in the digital. I think that's one way. Also, too, usually more around the light half of the year. I'm not sure about the dark half of the year. That depends on covens. There may be covens that are open to having ritual with people who do not have a coven at all. So if you're solitary, you could be looking for those kind of spots. Maybe up till like basically autumn, but from like spring to autumn, there are more covens that are usually open. There could be more online forums or these bigger groups that you can get in and see if they have other covens, and seeing like who's the high priestess, who's the high priest, maybe even talking to like, oh, could I speak to a general member? Some people have websites now, so that's another thing, an actual website. Maybe just filling out a questionnaire and saying like, I'm interested in joining a coven, here's where I stand. Are you looking for any? Are you accepting members? That's a good way. Also too, I mean, if you're a witch, I mean, you could do spell work on essentially, you know, finding other witches. There are all types of spells, or even one that you can create yourself, to finding witches in the astral, essentially, and asking, you know, the universe, Brahma, or whomever you work with, to bring those witches to you so that you can actually meet them in the physical. So I think that's a good way.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first thing, if you're interested in joining a coven, would be make sure that you're part of your local community. Make sure that you're shopping from metaphysical stores. Make sure that you're attending local events that are open to the public. You know, make sure that you're social networking with other witches. You know, I believe Witchvox is no longer a thing.
Yeah, as far as I know.
At least in terms of this video, but Witchvox was a resource where covens would register and post, and then people could join into those conversations and find other covens. But social media now, there's a lot of covens who are online, who have pages where you can contact coven leadership, and coming out to your local pagan pride is another big one. Usually there's tents there and information about various covens at pagan prides. So I think really just connecting yourself more to community, and if you are really desiring and willing to be a part of a coven, that will manifest for you. I don't think it always has to be something that you seek out. Sometimes it just happens.
There's a lot of resources that you can use. I know of a couple Instagram pages that I follow that actually offer like an online coven type thing, and it's really cool because you can really reach out and you can connect to people. You might be able to find people that are closer to you, if you don't necessarily live in an area where maybe there's like a community for it, because a lot of the time that is something to take into consideration. So joining like an online coven is not something that's shamed or anything like that. Really just, if it's something that comes to you and it feels right, generally it should work out for you. Basically just follow your gut with it is what I would say. Even, you know, asking your community, finding out, going to different stores and stuff, just reaching out to people.
And what do you feel like would be some red flags about a coven? What, like, because I think the next part of this question are, what are some red flags to look for when deciding to join a coven?
Anything that basically gives up your general liberties and rights, I would reconsider.
Reconsider it.
Yeah. That's a hot topic right there. If they're asking you to do things that you're not at all comfortable with, then it's definitely not for you. Yeah, just follow your gut with that kind of stuff. As long as you got the street smarts, you know.
You know. I think some red flags in terms of a coven are, what are your personal boundaries and what are you comfortable and not comfortable with in the craft? You know, there's the topic of the rule of 3. There's the topic of karma, right? Like there's the topic of the threefold law, right? There's the 4 powers of the Magi. There's the 13 goals of a witch. There is occult practices that are of the right hand and the left hand path. What are you and are you not comfortable working with? Are you not comfortable with talking to the dead? Are you not comfortable with necromancy or seances? Are you not comfortable with working with spirits of the land or fae folk? Are you comfortable with working with gods who you necessarily haven't had a relationship with until joining this coven? What are your thoughts on egregores and hive minds? Are you willing to show up for your coven folk and help them manifest as they will help you? I think that a lot of that ties back into the 13 goals of a witch, the 4 powers of the magi, and really knowing yourself, the first goal, really knowing yourself and knowing what you are and are not comfortable with. And make sure that you're really paying attention to your intuition when you're petitioning a coven or meeting coven folk, because you will know if the vibe is right. And that's it, basically. If the vibe is right, you will know. And that's kind of my 2 cents on that. If something doesn't feel right, baby, it's not for you. Okay? There are some covens out there who practice Skyclad, which, for those of you who don't know, Skyclad means naked. That means being in a ritual space fully naked. You know, are you going to be comfortable with that? Well, if not, then maybe that particular coven is not for you. There are covens out there who do group hex work, group spell work. You know, if you're not really comfortable with hexing your coven folks' ex, then maybe that particular coven's not for you, babe, and that's okay. But you need to kind of understand what the practices of the coven are and see if they're really in alignment with you, is what I would say. What would you say?
I mean, it's definitely understanding the people. That's the biggest thing. Because you can understand, how can I say, like looking at their website or their Facebook page or whatever it is that talks about like their goals, their mission statement and all that. But what is this person like magically?
The
Are they
application
messy?
of like morals and ethics.
Yeah, like okay, well, I'm down for X, Y, and Z when it comes to, you know, the craft or working with divinity. Okay, cool. Okay, but have you worked with this divinity? No, I haven't. But can you tell me more? I can't tell you. Oh, no, that's a red flag.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to kind of at least point me in the right direction of
Share
what
the
I need
links.
to know, come on. Like, we live in the world of the digital. And I think, too, being informative and also being inquisitive, like I said earlier, really knowing, like, what is this person really like? What's they Tuesday kind of set up like? Oh, they do that. Oh, I may not be interested in all that. What's your vibe? What's your tribe? You know, if they don't match it, baby, then, you know, shuffle. There's a million other witches you can talk to.
I think the moral of the story with this one is trust the vibes.
You know.
Trust your vibes.
You know.
Okay, so who can join a coven?
Depends on the coven.
It really does.
And I feel like we talked about this a little bit with our coven of like the 13 goals of a witch. We mentioned the 4 powers of the magi. We haven't really talked about that, but from coven to coven, it's going to depend. There are some covens that are men only, some covens that are women only, some covens that are queer only. There are some covens for people in a certain age bracket or a lower age bracket or a higher age bracket. There are certain covens that are only for traditions like Gardnerianism or Alexandrianism covens within Wicca. There are certain covens that are only eclectic covens. There are covens that exclusively are of the left hand. There are covens that are exclusively of the right hand. There are covens that are both. So who can join a coven? Like I said, we can only speak from our coven experience. And who can join, that's kind of a loaded topic in a way. Because it's not necessarily about who can join, it's about why are they wanting to join and why are we wanting them to join.
Is it beneficial to the coven too? Because it's definitely, it goes both sides. It's like a relationship. Like,
it really is, like, in my opinion, almost like a witchy spiritual marriage.
yeah, exactly. Because you just don't do certain magic with anybody. You know, in covenry, it's kind of like y'all are together to do the work together. Y'all don't need to be dating outside.
Right, and you can still have your own individual practice. And you can practice as well with your coven folk. But people outside of the tradition, you cannot just meet up at Applebee's and decide to do a money jar spell right there with some random person.
Yeah, no.
And you cannot really blend your magic with someone else's magic, even if they're your friend or a family member, because they are not part of the coven.
Exactly.
So you practice magic yourself as a solitary when you're in this coven, or you practice magic with your coven, but you do not practice with other people outside of the tradition. Now, you could go to a ritual, like let's say you go to a full moon ritual, but if there was spell work also involved in the ritual, then you would need to step out. You can practice divination outside the coven, but not spell work.
Right.
Family line.
Do I have to have a family line of witches to join the coven?
Hell no. No.
That's gatekeeping.
Hell no. To the no, no, no. No, hell to the no. No, no. Hell to the no.
Yeah, it's not necessary, boo. That's hereditary. Like that's your actual family line. Like, if they come from a line of witches, then they're probably not going to, like, not always, maybe some, I don't know, they're not going to try and blend that bloodline like that. You do not have to be a part of a bloodline. It's hella gatekeeping.
Well, and I will say this too. There's the conversation of hereditary witchcraft and lineage-based witchcraft. So hereditary witchcraft is witchcraft that is in your family line. Do you need to have other witches in your family? Honey, chances are, let's call a spade, most of us probably have witches going back in our family lines that we may or may not even know of. So most of us probably do have some people in our ancestry who were witches, whether they called themselves witches or not, kind of irrelevant. But lineage-based witchcraft is not in relation to your bloodline whatsoever. So if Mary is an HP and has Rebecca, who's a coven mate, and Rebecca then hives off from that coven, Mary then becomes Rebecca's mother in the craft, and then Rebecca has her coven that she hived off from this coven, and that's how lineage works. Lineage is not based off of the blood, it's based off of the etheric magic that connects the witches within a coven, and that's how it works in our coven. Oh God.
And then what is expected to be?
What is expected to be a part of our coven?
Just for
What would y'all say?
Attendance.
I mean,
Show up
yeah, show up and show out.
in the physical, in the astral, in the digital. Stand for your coven. Like,
Period. 4 powers of the Magi: to know, to will, to dare, to keep silent. Keep your mouth shut when you need to. Ready to will the magic when we're ready. Dare to do. Always know. And if you don't know, find out.
Yeah, I think what's required for one is there's a petitioning process. So you would inquire to join, and it would be a two-way dialogue of what our coven's looking for in a member and what you're looking for in a coven. And then if that matches up, then there would be an initiation process.
Right.
And if you were to get through that initiation process, then you would be a outer court member. But the requirements for being an outer court member are going to be different than an inner court member. But you would be initiating into the outer court first, and those requirements would be show up for the 8 sabbats, show up for ritual, be part of a group chat. Of course, know yourself, know your path, know your craft already prior to. You know, keep our traditions sacred and shrouded under the 4th power of the Magi, and represent the coven and bring honor and glory.
Period.
For an outer coven member, that's kind of it.
it's not asking a lot.
Not really, no.
So this is going to conclude our questions. We will be doing probably a part 2, maybe even a part 3 and part 4. But there's a lot that I feel like we have to say about these questions, so this will probably be multiple segments. And also, too, I wanted to bring my other coven folk in on this because I wanted you to have the different perspectives within a coven and not just an HP's perspective. I wanted you to hear from other coven folk as well about their experience and their perspective. So thank you both for joining in on this video.
No problem.
And until next time, guys, blessed be.